This is 5 Live Formula One with Jenny Gow.
Well, the first race of the season brought us drama, a beautiful battle for the win, heartbreak for Red Bull, a surprise haul of points for Haas, and a Ferrari 1-2. Now it's time for race 2. And F1 comes to the streets of Jeddah, where the sun will set between the first and second practice sessions, and the race to master these brand new F1 cars continues. In the commentary box, we have former Mercedes test and reserve driver Sam Bird and current Formula E driver for Jaguar, and Jack Nicholls. Now, Jack, the flags were flying in Maranello once again for the first time since 2019. Apparently the bells were ringing out in the churches, and Ferrari lead the championship with 44 points to their nearest rivals Mercedes, and Haas in third spot. Yes, you heard that right, with 10 points. Almost unthinkable, Jack, coming into the season.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really remarkable that weekend in Bahrain. So many stories to come out of it. And now we find out what happens next, and that's the most exciting part, is the next chapter. So a lot to reflect on, which we'll be doing a lot over the next couple of hours, or hour here and then an hour later on this afternoon. There's also the Checker Flag podcast as well, which you don't forget to download. But what comes next? Who's going to be quick here? Are Ferrari still going to be towards the front of the order? Can Red Bull recover a little bit? Can Mercedes recover a lot?
So many questions.
Yeah.
Sam, Italy, out of the World Cup last night, failed to qualify. Now, all of the weight of expectation shifts across to Ferrari. It is always the same, but it seems whenever they're successful, it ramps up. What will it be like at Maranello now?
Oh, Maranello will be buzzing, Jenny, right now, unlike the Italian national team, which was a bit of a shock, I'm not going to lie. I spent the evening watching the Wales game, and then I could not believe what I'd heard about Italy losing. But anyway, on to Ferrari. They will be thrilled with the start. It couldn't have got any better, could it? A 1-2 finish in the opening race. Now it's about trying to keep that momentum going. The difficulty is they will have a charging Max Verstappen, eager to score his first points and first win of the season this weekend.
Andrew Benson is also with us for this session. Now, we have had some answers from Red Bull, sort of, Andrew.
Yes, they say that the cars failed not because there was not enough fuel in the car, as some people suspected, although there was a problem with fuel pressure, they say, and a vacuum was forming in the system, which was causing the cars to break down, basically. They said they've got a fix in place for this weekend. They obviously lost a lot of points. They were on course for second and fourth places with Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, but I mean, I think it missed the explanation they gave earlier today on social media misses the fundamental point, which is that the reason we think this happened is that Red Bull never did full race distance in testing, so they never got to see how their fuel system would act after an hour and a half of being thrown around in hot temperatures, whereas Mercedes, for example, and Ferrari did do that, and it's sort of basic housekeeping. So that's it's because they were late with the car and they were doing their best to get everything they could onto it. But I wonder whether they'll end up regretting that. We'll have to find out in 22 races time, Jenny.
We will. We'll keep track of it for sure. And Sebastian Vettel is still out this race weekend, so Nico Hülkenberg will deputise for him. He was on the same plane. What has happened to my words? They've just disappeared. It's really annoying. Never mind. He was on the same plane as us coming back, did some sim work, and then headed back out to Saudi Arabia. So he'll be feeling all at sea a little bit, but another chance for him to get to grips with the Aston Martin, which is good for him, not so great for Vettel. Jack, we're coming up to about 40 seconds to go until the session starts, so let's give people a chance to sync up properly, because I failed to do that from the pit lane last time out. Apologies. Well, over to you.
There's no real rush, Jenny, because we never got a sync point in any of the practice sessions, because the tower took about 5 minutes to come up on screen, so I don't think I'm going to be able to sync it for you unless we've sorted those problems out, but we'll give it a go. I did have a little look into North Macedonian racing drivers. None in Formula One, none really in the world, but there is actually a man called Erhan Yayovski, who is one of the best esports sim racers in the world. And he is from North Macedonia. Lovely man. Light goes green at the end of the pit lane now. I'll wait until there's the clock on screen to give you the sync. Hashtag BBC F1 on the social medias. F1 at bbc.co.uk on email. And the cars are streaming out onto the circuit straight away, really. Very sandy on the pit lane exit. We have had some running on track today. There's been Formula 2 practice earlier on this morning, so the track shouldn't be horrific, as the first car out on circuit is Fernando Alonso in his pink Alpine. He said he was fairly happy with how the weekend went for the Alpine squad. Double points finish, but I think I said this in one of the podcasts. It's difficult to work out where you expect them to be. Should they be front runners by this point, since Renault kind of came back in 2016?
There's always this talk, isn't there, about how they're going to make a big step forwards, and there's always this hope and anticipation every year, and it's never really happens. They always they're in the middle somewhere, very bland, as it were. I hope that's not too harsh, but they just sort of prop up the back of the top 10, which is fine, but you would expect a car company like as big as Alpine and with the force of Renault behind them to be able to do slightly better. That's just my honest opinion.
So I think they suffered quite a lot last year and the year before with engine, couldn't get on top of it, and they've really sat down and thought about what philosophy they want to take, the direction they want to take with their engine, and there's a great hope, I think, within the team this year that what they've produced is something far better, a very different philosophy to the one they've had before, but something that works really well with the car and can give them the horsepower they need to start to try and challenge.
Yes, Jenny, they've followed Mercedes' design lead on the engine. People may remember, people who are of technical bent may remember that when Mercedes started the hybrid era back in 2014, they were the first team to create what's called a split turbo. That means putting the compressor at the front of the engine and the turbo at the back, which is a very difficult design challenge. They're normally sighted together, largely because the rod that connects the two parts has to rotate up to 125,000 revs per minute. Now, since then, Honda also followed that route, and Renault have also followed it again themselves this year, and we're not quite sure where Ferrari are. There's still a bit of unknown about what Ferrari did with their design for this new engine they've introduced this year. Having said that, on the power unit, there is some potentially bad news for Alpine, because they've just announced that they've had to fit a new engine to Alonso's car for this weekend. They found what they describe as a suspected sealing issue with his power unit after the Bahrain Grand Prix. That's being sent back to Viry-Châtillon, their engine base near Paris, for investigation, and they say they will put it back in the pool for later in the season.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye out on that one as the season progresses. Nico Hülkenberg is out on circuit, learning the track in his Aston Martin. He's coming up to the very fast left-hander at turn 23, where Mick Schumacher ended up in the wall last year that triggered the first of the red flags. Now he comes through the sweepers. Still quite sandy out there, up towards the final corner at turn 27, which is a third gear left-hander, taking at about 100 kilometers per hour. That's the corner where Max Verstappen crashed out of qualifying last season, and then he heads down the start, finish straight again. Hülkenberg only got the confirmation he'd be racing this morning, but he's going to be a little bit more up to speed than he was in Bahrain, I'd have thought.
Yeah, he's had a weekend under his belt, Jack. I felt like at the beginning of the weekend, last weekend was really, really tough for him. Watching him on the hard compound in free practice 1, he looked a little bit all at sea, but in the race he did okay. I think that car is a long way behind where it needs to be. But as substitutes go, it doesn't get too much better than Nico Hülkenberg. He'll be fine this weekend.
Absolutely. Hülkenberg, Zhou and Albon and Magnussen are the 4 drivers. I think I've just sort of made that up by looking at them, but I think those are the 4 drivers that have not raced in Saudi Arabia before. Valtteri Bottas just went very, very deep into the final corner. We're just getting a replay of one of the Red Bulls doing similarly. Big lockup actually on the left front for Verstappen. He went sailing on at 27.
Absolutely. Again, a little bit like what we saw in Bahrain, the hard compound on the first few laps. looks really, really tricky. The fronts just don't work. They're not biting into the surface like the mediums and the softs. Lewis Hamilton out on the softs as we speak.
Hamilton, who broke a record last weekend, and he became the driver with the most podiums in consecutive years. So a podium every year for 16 years.
Box in slowly, and do not shift. In slow, do not shift. Norris 7 behind.
Copy. I'm in 8th though, so I'll have to shift. I might have to go down a few gears.
So that's Kevin Magnussen very urgently getting told to come into the pits and don't shift. So they've obviously seen a problem there, and the Haas returns to the pit lane after his heroics in Bahrain. Just to finish that little stat, so he broke Michael Schumacher's record, who had 15 years with a podium from 92 to 2006. And then you have the sort of regular people: Sebastian Vettel, Nigel Mansell, Fernando Alonso, 12, Prost, Senna. Fifth on that list, 12 years in a row with a podium, Gerhard Berger. 12 seasons in a row.
I would not have thought Gerhard Berger is that high up on that list. I mean, great driver.
Yeah. Great stuff. Well done, Gerhard.
So we're now going on board with Kevin Magnussen. It sounds a little bit unhealthy. As we heard the team say, stuck in 8th gear. Clearly not ideal when you're going into a hairpin, but let's see if he can get back out. It doesn't sound particularly great for the start of his weekend.
No, indeed. 53. Oh, let's do a sync, shall we? 53 minutes and 27, 26, 25, 24 seconds left on the clock. Jenny.
Yay. Good thinking. Just on the tyres. Thanks.
I got that sinking feeling.
Yes, in this session I seem to. Worth pointing out that they've got the C2, the C3 and the C4, so that's a middle range of tyres. Obviously they're still branded as the hard, medium and soft. They have 2 hards, 3 mediums and 8 of the soft tyres for the weekend.
People are really getting stuck into that final corner. Pierre Gasly now, the latest driver. You heard the squeal of the tyres there as he went straight on.
Everybody that's locked up so far into the final corner has been on the hard compound tyre. And it looks at the same point. Everybody's having the same problem at exactly the same point.
Very good point from Bethany Waring. Is Jack sure Joe hasn't raced in Saudi Arabia? Now you point it out. Jack isn't sure, because you're right, he probably did Formula 2 last year, didn't he? But let's say Formula 1 debut at Saudi Arabia. But obviously he does know the track. So I think it's just the 3 drivers who don't know their way at all around this Saudi Arabia circuit.
Joe's done a great job in, I think, rivaling Lewis Hamilton on the fashion front. So I don't know whether you've seen his outfits coming into the circuit.
They're strong.
They are bold. I'd look ridiculous in some of these outfits, by the way, everybody. I just can't pull them off.
How much effort do you put into like race day outfits?
Does it look like I put any effort into any day outfit?
Are you, if the team are like, you've got to wear team kit, are you like, oh, thank you, great?
I wear team kit and I wear whatever is in front of me. Okay. And that is about as much effort as goes into my being as possible. As we see Max Verstappen come across the line and set probably the first meaningful-ish time of the weekend so far with a 1:31.885 on the hard compound tyre.
So that's 2 seconds slower than the fastest lap time from last year's free practice 1. That was Hamilton on a 29.786. In theory, these cars are going to be a little slower than last year. The sound you can hear is Hamilton coming out of the left-hander of turn 13, now into the fast sweepers where you downshift a couple for the right-hander of 16, then back on the power again, getting up to approaching 200 miles an hour on the run towards turn 22. Well, Mercedes saying it's actually a smidge over 200. What's he going to be when he gets there? It's 196 before he swings it into that left-hand turn, and then back full throttle again for the remaining sweepers up towards the final corner. He's on the soft tyre here, Lewis Hamilton. He's not going quicker than Verstappen. We'll see how he gets his braking done at the final corner. Very, very kind of bumpy on the... I think he's just snatched the left front as well.
He has. I don't think that car looks very happy at all at the moment. Clearly a long way behind Verstappen's time. Well, over a second actually slower than Max Verstappen, but the rear of the car just looks so unhappy on change of direction. It didn't look like there was a lot of porpoising on this lap, but it just doesn't look fully hooked up, Jack.
No, indeed, and that was the thing for Mercedes, wasn't it, in Bahrain? Yes, there was the porpoising, but they have other problems as well, and it's whether they're related to the porpoising or separate issues.
Every time he was getting on the throttle at Bahrain, there'd be a little snap on exit. Now that snap, although it doesn't look very big, that then translates to straight line speed. All the way down each straight in Bahrain, he's losing time compared to Leclerc, compared to Verstappen and the people he's racing against. Plus, those little snaps add a little bit of extra tyre temp into the tyre, which will then cause you to lose grip as well. So it's like a snowball effect if you have that kind of little imbalance. And it from initial laps here, it doesn't look like it's been cured yet. Here, look, it's a back-to-back weekend. There's not much that they can do in between a Bahrain and this weekend, but you know, the engineers would have hoped that they could have at least solved a little bit of those issues, as we see Kevin Magnussen, helmet off, earplugs out, and it doesn't look like that car's going anywhere for the near future.
No, it looks as though the engine cover is coming off. Hamilton's saying this morning they've got no new bits or parts, but they've got some ideas that they're going to try in free practice 1 to see what helps. 48 minutes and 50 seconds now left on the clock. The order is Verstappen quickest on that 1 minute 31.885. He's 8 tenths ahead of Perez on the hard tyre also. Hamilton is 1.1 seconds off Verstappen, but on the soft tyre. Tsunoda is 4th on the hard tyre. Ricciardo 5th on the medium tyre for McLaren. Stroll, Ocon, Gasly, Norris and Hülkenberg the top 10. Latifi and Albon, the 12 drivers to have set a lap time. The 2 Ferraris have not left the pits at all yet, so they are very chilled at the top of the championship at the moment. 12 minutes into the session, not even feeling the need for an install.
No, I think that they're just waiting for the track to get better. At the moment, the track is a way off where it's going to be for really any relevant testing for the rest of the weekend. They're not going to be driving in this temperature, in this daylight, in these conditions when it matters. So why bother burning the fuel and going through the tyres if it doesn't mean anything? If they're happy with what they've got as a base, then there's no need to go out just yet. They will venture out very soon to get some preliminary laps in, but right now the track is still very green, very dusty.
47.5 minutes to go. As you say, bright sunshine at the moment, 23 degrees the air temperature, track temperature 28.9 degrees, so a similar air temperature to Bahrain, slightly lower track temperature, but very different surface as well. Brand new in like November last year, track surface, as opposed to the Bahrain surface, which must be, 15 years old now, I think. 2004 was the first Bahrain race, something like that.
I mean, at 15, what were you doing
so
at 15?
So that's more than
that. Mean
16, that's 17 or 18 years old.
Does that mean that surface is getting a bit temperamental, not listening to people, listens to a bit of Linkin Park, you know, typical 15-year-old sort of stuff? No, when you get a new surface, Jack,
very aggressive.
So when you lay a racetrack,
are you going to say bitumen at any point in this sentence?
No,
that's what we're all here for.
I'm not. No, I wasn't going to go that far. But the oil comes to the surface, and it can be quite slick and quite greasy to begin with. Now it's cured. It has the potential this year to be quite a quick surface.
Just a message through from Haas saying it's a hydraulics issue for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. They're going to try and change his radiator most probably. They had a hydraulic leak in qualifying, didn't they, in the second part of qualifying, which caused them to have a little bit of a hairy moment. They didn't think they'd get through. They did manage to, but I wonder if that's come back to bite them on the bottom slightly.
Yeah,
they had a whole race in between.
That's very true. It was a hydraulic problem in qualifying. Esteban Ocon's just gone straight on at the turn 1 left-right chicane. The corner where he took the lead of the race last year after Hamilton and Verstappen's little head-to-head, and then he ended up sort of in the middle of that squabble. I didn't envy him at that point last year. Okay, I'm sure he was delighted to be leading and at the front and in the fight, but it wasn't the kind of time to get involved in the middle of Hamilton and Verstappen, was it?
But you're going to take it, aren't you, to lead a Formula One race? I mean, why not? these tyres, especially the hards, they look like they will work longitudinally, but when you try and combine longitudinal grip with lateral grip, that first phase when you turn in, the inside tyre is always under so much stress, and that tyre is always snatching right now. So we've seen it a lot into turn 27. We're now seeing Ocon going into turn 1 having the same issue. The hard is not working well when you try and combine those two phases.
Andrew, I can't remember who it was, and you might not remember either. I'm going to go with Ocon, who said about the tyres earlier on that it's a different challenge. It's not necessarily better or worse, and it's just as difficult to get them in the right window and to use them properly, but it is very different this year.
Well, I think let's take an overview of this for a minute. So, first of all, on Sam's point about the tyres and what they like to do and what they don't like to do, it's always been the case with the Pirelli tyres in Formula One that they're happy going sort of longitudinally, as he puts it, but they're not very happy when you want to brake and turn. It's always been a characteristic of Pirelli's. I'm sure if Sam drove the 2013 Mercedes back in the day, I'm sure he experienced that himself.
Let's not go there. Let's not go to the rookie test of 2013 with Mercedes, because I could spend a long time on that with the Spygate Barcelona test, which then meant that I was banned from the rookie test, which effectively ended my Formula One career. But let's not go into that. I forgot
that you
Andrew
were involved in that. Sam,
no, don't. I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to go back to the Priory now. You brought up bad memories.
I don't remember the Spygate.
Anyway, I'll come back to that later if you want, but just to make the point about the Pirellis, obviously, in addition to the new rules this year, the tyres, they've not only been added to 18-inch wheels, so they're bigger and lower profile, but the whole point, here's some radio.
The 50-metre marker at braking for turn 1. It's come loose. I think it might get onto the track, so if they're able to clean that up before someone takes it out. Okay, copy, we'll relay that.
Too late, Danny Rick. The 50-metre marker has sort of fallen off the fencing onto the track, and and the red flag is out. So someone has obliterated that little bit of polystyrene. So the marshals will go out, sweep it up, and then we'll be back on the way. So you've got plenty of time here, Andrew. Relax, and get stuck into this.
Yeah, so obviously the point of the change in rules was to make the cars more raceable, close up the field and make them able to race more closely together. And in tandem with that, obviously the tyres until last year wouldn't really allow that to happen. It wasn't just a function of the aerodynamics of the cars that made it difficult to overtake. It was also the fact that the drivers couldn't push the tyres to the limit, and if they ended up behind another car, the loss of downforce made them overheat, which was their fundamental issue, and you had to back off. So you basically couldn't push hard in any circumstances in a race, whether it's trying to overtake or trying to go faster. So Pirelli were, after lots and lots of years of arguing about Pirelli tyres and people not being happy with them generally, and I remember rows back in the day in 2013 between Fernando Alonso and Paul Hembry, the then boss of Pirelli Motorsport, and lots of dissatisfaction, they were finally given a clear target for this year to produce, which they've complained they never had before, to produce tyres that could be pushed to the limit in the races, weren't sensitive to overheating to anywhere near the degree that they were before, and also worked, had a sort of more amenable working window, if you like. It was easier to get them into the place where they need to be to work at their optimum. Now, it's only been one race and a couple of test sessions, but it has to be said, to be completely frank, the evidence that Pirelli have succeeded in that aim so far is not good. The drivers were lapping just as far off the pace in the race in Bahrain as they had done before. They were complaining about overheating. I heard them talking about management this morning in the news conferences. So I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt for now, but it's beginning to look as if Pirelli have not managed to succeed in getting to produce tyres that behave in the way the Formula One drivers want them to be behaving, and in the way the sport has asked Pirelli to make them behave.
Well, interesting. Red flag out at the moment. Everybody's going to sweep up the the debris. Bahrain is a bit of an unusual example, though, isn't it, Andrew? Like, it's famously high degradation, and I think it was Verstappen saying earlier on that he felt like he could follow better before that, but then the tyres overheated. But it took 3 laps for that to happen, as opposed to the 1 lap of last year. And Bahrain is a high degradation circuit, so maybe when we go to a track that's better, that will be better noticeably.
Yeah, maybe. That's why I gave you the big caveat that it's only one race, and you're absolutely right to point out that the track at Bahrain is very abrasive, and at circuits that are not so abrasive, that condition might be better. And again, to be fair, that there have been races from time to time in the past where some combination of chemical reaction and track surface and tyre operating temperature has come together in the Pirelli era to allow the drivers to actually push hard through the races. It happened in Portugal a couple of times, in the 2 races that were in Portugal most recently, and it happens at Silverstone, bizarrely, considering the amount of lateral load that goes into the tyres around Silverstone because of its high-speed nature. But there is, as I say, it's just it's only the evidence of one race at one track so far, but it would be a shame, let's put it that way, if they haven't succeeded in getting the tyres to behave in the way that, for example, the other brands of tyres that Sam might be familiar with do behave on race cars. And I think it's going to lead to some existential, far-reaching questions within Formula One about what they do about that, because there's not much point making cars that are easier and better to race, but then having tyres on them that stop them doing it.
I remember doing a test with Mercedes. There's a test facility in Spain called Idiada. So we went to Idiada to do some work. And when you go to Idiada, you can do loads of different things. It's really cool kind of place. But there was a big circle that they wanted me to drive round. Go down a straight, drive round a big circle 5 or 6 times, and that was your lot on a constant speed. Now, the only time that they'd been there before was on the grooved Michelin tyre back way when it was BAR. So they had some data from then. The team then became Braun, it became Mercedes. I was working with them, and we went on to the Pirelli. And they gave me a target, I think, of 200 kilometers an hour to go around this big circle. Anyway, and because that's what they did before.
Yeah.
So we thought, well, the cars have evolved and we've got more downforce, so we'll be able to do that, no problem, all day long.
And what's that, like 150, 160?
150 mile an hour,
yeah.
roughly. So I approach this big circle. I turn in on the white line to go around the circle, and the front tyre did not want to know. The Pirelli tyre did not want to know, so we had to fundamentally change my constant speed, I think down to about 170, about 30k slower.
Wow.
To get round this circle. So I've worked with Michelin, I've driven on a Bridgestone, and I've driven on a Pirelli. I'm not going to say who my favourite is, because I don't think that's very fair on anybody, but certainly they work in different ways. I think that the Bridgestone Life was great. The Michelin's workability, drivability in both longitudinal and lateral grip is fantastic, and the Pirelli is different to them. So take that for what it is, everybody. It's a different tyre. No, it is. It's a different tyre, and it has served a purpose very well within Formula One for 11 years now. It's created some amazing races. It created one of the best World Championships ever last year. So,
yeah,
it's worked well. It's different. Does it thrill you when you're driving it? Maybe not compared to some other tyres, but it works well.
That's Sam Bird alongside me in commentary this weekend, as he was last weekend in Bahrain, the former Mercedes test and reserve driver and the current Jaguar TCS racing driver in Formula E. Was still under red flag, kind of like last time in Bahrain. We've got quite a lengthy red flag over quite an innocuous moment, but they've just got to sweep some polystyrene off after Lando Norris just knocked the brake marker on the right-hand side. He thought he'd clipped the wall, which surprised him, but it wasn't. It was just the brake marker. So, really quickly, Andrew, well, not really quickly because we're still under red flag, but what I actually don't really know what this Spygate thing is you're referring to, and we're not going to chuck Sam into it necessarily, but what even is the ref, I don't really know what that was.
Do you remember it, Andrew? Do you remember what happened in 2013?
Of course I remember it. Yeah. And the first time it came out was at the Monaco Grand Prix weekend in 2013. And I'll tell you what, the Ferrari team boss, Stefano Domenicali, Red Bull bosses Christian Horner and Adrian Newey, and the McLaren bosses were absolutely furious when they found out. Basically, Mercedes had done a tyre test with a current car, which was against the rules. And
I think I remember this, actually. So like a couple of days at Barcelona in secret or something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Exactly that, yeah. And their rivals were just absolutely spitting blood about it. And in the end, Mercedes got punished. They were banned from I've just found the story, actually. They were banned from that year's Young Driver test at the end of the year and given an official reprimand. And they were to some degree, it was said that there was some extenuating circumstances in the sense that Charlie Whiting, the late Charlie Whiting, who was the FIA F1 director at the time, had sort of indicated to them that it would be okay to do this test. And they hadn't acted in bad faith, and there was no intention to gain any sporting advantage. But certainly their rivals thought that they had done, and this was at a time actually when Mercedes had been struggling really badly in terms of tyre operation, and quite a lot of the time would sort of sink backwards at an alarming rate during races. So you can imagine why the three teams that were their biggest rivals were so cross about it.
Crikey. So no rookie test for Sam Bird.
So the cars have gone back out on track.
They have indeed.
No, there wasn't. It was a shame at the time. But I was a team player, and I was happy that the team didn't get sanctioned any further. There was no penalty points, or they didn't lose out World Championship wise, which was critical for the team. It was just a shame that, I was doing GP2 that year, 5 wins in GP2, and that would have been me trying to showcase my talent out there to the Formula One world to try and get a drive the next year, because I was not allowed to, because I was employed by Mercedes. We were banned from the rookie test. I had no way of showcasing my ability in a Formula One car, and unfortunately that brought down my chances of a Formula One drive. But hey ho. If you hear sobbing in the toilet later, it's I promise it's not me.
You wouldn't be where you are today if it had been so. Thank you, lucky
spending
stars.
time with you.
Exactly.
Oh, the joys.
So cars back out on track then after that fairly lengthy red flag. That was the story of Testgate in 2013.
That's
for
the one.
Those of you in our new regular feature, Stories with Andrew Benson. 32 minutes left on the clock. I'll give you a sync once this replay is finished. Mercedes have... it looks as though they've made their sort of rear wing quite a bit smaller this weekend. There was talk about them having a particularly draggy car in the last race in Bahrain. So that looks like that has been changed a little bit. 32 minutes and 8, 7, 6, 5 seconds left on the clock. If any of you have lost sync. Someone actually asked on the emails, Colin in Oxford says, why do you do that sync thing? Basically, it's for those people who like to watch along on the telly, mute the telly and watch it with us. And we're very grateful to them, so we'll do everything we can to make their viewing experience as good as possible. The problem is I usually do the sync during the advert breaks, so I'm like counting down while they're watching a toothpaste advert. 31.5 minutes to go. So Verstappen's still quickest on the hard tyre. Tsunoda and Gasly are second and third fastest now on the soft tyre. 8/10 slower than Max Verstappen. The sound you can hear is George Russell in the Mercedes. Both Hasses, Jenny, are still in the pit lane at the moment.
Yes, they are, and clearly that red flag actually helped them out because Magnussen will lose less time compared to everybody else, but they're still working on trying to get that hydraulics fix. And as you said, the Ferrari's now out. They were just waiting for other people to clean up the track. So thanks everybody else. Off we go.
Yeah, indeed. So Tsunoda has just done a cool-down lap, as have... Oh, actually, they've just done out-laps, actually. So now they're going to go again. They were there beforehand. Perez is fourth quickest. Hamilton fifth. Russell is now coming through the final sector. He's just coming up to turn 27 as he hits 198 miles an hour before getting onto the brakes. Gets the apex, gets the late apex anyway, gets through the left-hander and out over the start-finish straight. He's backed off there, hasn't he? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, really strange. Very weird braking into the final corner. It's like he gave the lap up before it had ended. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc about to finish their first flying laps around here. A long way off at the moment, but yeah, first lap, Saita lap, kind of to be expected.
Chris Riv says Bensonori. Apparently that's going to be the name whenever, if I remember it, whenever Andrew tells a story. Bensonori. Half an hour to go, halfway through this session. The Ferraris are 10th quickest with Charles Leclerc on the hard tyre, 3 seconds slower than Max Verstappen at the moment. Where is Leclerc now? He is just coming into turns 1 and 2, so we'll see if he's... Well, no, he did just do a relative push lap on that last lap. Meanwhile, Daniel Ricciardo is coming through the early S's sequence of corners that takes him down towards the hairpin long banked left-hander at turn 13 and then fires him back up south down the seafront. Jenny?
Yeah, just having a look at Carlos Sainz's car. He's got some flovers front left, and they have done some tweaks to that car, probably to make it even faster. But a lot of the teams bringing tiny little tweaks, adjustments, but also using this as a test bed for future development as well. So always like to keep an eye out on who's got flovers, and it's Sainz out in the Ferrari.
McLaren, Jack, McLaren. Now, they were a team in Bahrain that really had a bad weekend. If anybody left Bahrain with their tail between their legs, I think it was the Woking-based team. Danny Rick needs a good weekend. He needs a good weekend, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, no doubt. He qualified quite a way off Norris. Race-wise, he wasn't too far adrift in the end, but yeah, he really does. Because, I mean, okay, this is the dramatic stuff that sort of journalists say, but I'm going to say it to you anyway. Is this a career-defining year for Daniel Ricciardo?
It's a really interesting question because, you know, he started at HRT 2011 and he was seen as somebody very new, fresh, exciting. He then jumped into the Toro Rosso team and he...
Verstappen, the reigning champion, is currently fastest. He's 8/10 quicker than the rest of the field, but we had quite a long red flag while they cleared up some debris on the track, so we haven't really seen any laps from the Ferraris yet. Charles Leclerc, the championship leader, down in 13th place at the moment, but in the next 25 minutes or so we should get some more information and running and lap times, and that is live on Sports Extra. Sorry, Sam, I shouldn't have asked you such a deep question just before we were going to do an update into the news. But yeah, Ricciardo.
It's fine. So yeah, he joined F1 in 2011, exciting young prospect. Then he went to Toro Rosso, showcased his talent more against Jean-Eric Vergne, and it was close between the two, but he got the nod ahead of Jean-Eric Vergne to take the seat at Red Bull. He then impressed against Sebastian Vettel and won races with Red Bull. And ultimately, I think he was quite unlucky at a few stages in his Red Bull career. He then made that big call, didn't he, and moved to Renault, where he joined a team that promised the world, I think, and a lot of money. And it semi-worked. He's now joined McLaren.
A lot of bouncing.
And
Copy.
as Hamilton reports, a lot of bouncing. And he's up against Lando Norris, one of the most exciting current young drivers in Formula One. And yeah, I think he needs to make it work. I think it is a really important year. Is he ever going to win a world championship? Right now, no. No, he's not in the machinery to do so right now. And could he win one even if he was in the right team, because there's so many good young drivers now? It's hard to say. It really is. I think he's a wonderful driver, but have we seen the very, very best of Daniel Ricciardo?
I worry for Daniel that he always chooses the wrong team at the wrong time. It's a little bit like a Fernando Alonso, in that, you know, it seemed like Renault would be a good option, and yes, it was a bit of a payday for him, but he went with that and it didn't work out because they didn't have the car that they needed at the time for him to even try and succeed. And now he's got a close to McLaren, and you think, okay, well, McLaren, they're at the ascendancy, that'll be a good one. And last year, okay, he got beaten by Norris, I think comprehensively, we'd all say, but he was getting to grips with the new car. It wasn't his driving style. We all thought this year, maybe it's the year. And again, he's not in a car that can compete. And already some people are saying, well, McLaren, where can they go this year? They just don't have a machine that can challenge anybody. So is he going to be another one of those drivers that never fulfills his real potential?
But it's just stock, isn't it? I think that's the big thing. Yes, okay, the McLaren, you look at Fernando Alonso, who's sort of the famous one of wrong team, wrong time, never quite worked out sort of thing. But he kind of obliterated all of his teammates and proved that he was mega the whole time. And that's the worry with Ricciardo. If he was to have another year alongside Norris, okay, I think his contract goes to the end of, I don't think it's up at the end of this year. I think it's end of 23, yeah. But if you're beaten twice comprehensively by Norris in 2 years, that is when the big teams aren't going to sign you again. If he was destroying Norris, then maybe when Hamilton retires, Mercedes come knocking for Ricciardo. This is, super hypothetically. But if you're getting beaten comfortably by your teammate 2 years in a row, then I think that's where the worry comes. Norris comes across the line 9th quickest.
I absolutely agree with you that I think this year he has to find some form and he has to start beating Norris on a regular basis. And as you say, can he? That's the question. He'll believe he can, but I wonder if he actually can.
Ned says, so Carlos Sainz is a number 2 driver, and now Daniel Ricciardo has a career-defining season. Calm down. He went into a McLaren that didn't suit his driving style. Then year 2, a complete overhaul of regulations. Give these drivers a chance. Agreed?
Yes and no, because as a driver, you're always pitched against your teammate. Yeah. Always. I've had it throughout my Formula E career. Even when you're new to a team, it kind of doesn't matter. I'm employed and you're expected to be as quick as your teammate. That's why you're employed by them. So, look, he's had a year at McLaren now, and these guys are world-class drivers. I get that driving Formula One cars on the limit is difficult and challenging, but you would expect someone of his caliber, of his talent, to be within a 10th, 2 tenths of Norris all the time, without a question, because that's how good he is. Now, if that doesn't happen, questions need to be asked. What's going on? Why not? And you quickly get forgotten in motorsport, like so quickly. You get overlooked, overshadowed. Unlike any other sport.
Andrew Benson?
I think Jack's hit the nail on the head there. I mean,
what?
I haven't. Not Jack. Sorry.
Oh, right. Okay, I thought for once,
no.
after 8 years of 5 Live commentary, I thought I'd hit the nail on the head.
You'll get there, Jack. No, I think it's the mystery, the enigma of it that people have been struggling with. I mean, I haven't watched all of the new Netflix series on F1 yet. I saw the first couple of episodes, and there's a point early on in the 2021 season where people like Christian Horner are going, "What's going on? He's a better driver than this." And I think, let's not forget. Okay, when Verstappen got into the Red Bull, he won his first race, but that was kind of an accident in a way, and that's not to say that he didn't do a great job, but Red Bull put them on different strategies trying to defend against the Ferraris, and it just so happened that Verstappen's strategy was better that day. But basically, certainly for all through 2016 and for most of 2017, Ricciardo was, on balance, the better driver at Red Bull, the faster driver. Definitely in 2018, Verstappen got the edge on him, but it was still pretty marginal. They were still racing together quite often, separated by a tenth here, a couple of tenths there in qualifying, even though in that final year together, Verstappen definitely outqualified Ricciardo way more than Ricciardo outqualified Verstappen.
Well, you remember Baku 18, I mean, they were just dueling it out for whatever position it was.
Yeah, so then he went to Renault and he had a bit of a slow start at Renault. Eventually he got the upper hand on Nico Hülkenberg there towards the end of that year, and he was very much better than Esteban Ocon in his second year at Renault. But then he went to McLaren, and I take the member of the audience's point that, yes, the car didn't suit his driving style. But when you're that good, that shouldn't matter. When you're talking about one of the top 5 or 6 drivers in Formula One, which is what Daniel Ricciardo was considered to be for a long time. In fact, I remember doing an interview with Fernando Alonso towards the end of his time at McLaren. I think it was the end of 2016 in Austin. He actually picked Ricciardo as his best driver on the whole grid that year. So to be considered in that calibre and struggle to the extent that he did for much of last year shouldn't really happen. And if it carries on this year, lots of people are going to be asking that question: what on earth has happened to Daniel Ricciardo? And if it lasts for another year after that, then I think never mind the big teams not being interested in him when his McLaren contract runs out. McLaren might not be interested in him when his McLaren contract runs out.
Did the wind or something pick up? It's really difficult.
So we've seen a few moments over the last couple of moments. Pierre Gasly knocked the wall coming through the sweepers on the second half of the circuit. Max Verstappen just had quite a big slide. I think it was coming through, it was either 10 or 12. It's such a tricky circuit to work out where these drivers are sometimes, but that was quite a big slide for Verstappen there.
Very big slide. He actually got on the radio straight away and asked, has the wind picked up or changed direction, because he's really struggling out there. Also, offline, the track looks so dirty, sandy, dusty, looks awful.
Well, it's right by the beach in Jeddah. 19 minutes to go. The order is Verstappen quickest, but he's back in the pits on soft tyres. Gasly just went second quickest on the soft tyres. Leclerc's gone third quickest on the hard tyres, half a second adrift of Verstappen's lap time on hard tyres. So half a second between them. Leclerc's lap time was a lot later. Tsunoda fourth, Ocon fifth. Perez is sixth, but is improving at the moment. Here comes the Mexican across the line. He goes up into fifth place, so he's ahead of Ocon, who's sixth. Hamilton, Alonso, Ricciardo, Norris, the top 10. Sainz, Russell, Albon, Stroll, and Latifi, the top 15. Bottas, Hülkenberg, Joe, Schumacher, and Magnussen still in the pit. So Schumacher, the 19th driver to have set a lap time. Andrew Verstappen asking about the wind.
Well, yeah, these cars are very sensitive to the wind, Jack, aren't they? And as you say, lots of people were going off. So I saw Leclerc have a couple of moments in between setting that third fastest time. So it does look a bit tricky out there.
Yeah, drivers this morning were being asked about that as well, and conditions out there, weirdly, very similar to Bahrain last time out, which was incredibly windy, especially the Thursday and Friday, and here as well. It looks like Thursday and Friday quite windy, but overall conditions looking pretty decent. As you say, though, right by the Red Sea, it's quite an exposed circuit, being a track circuit, and I think, being a street circuit, and people have definitely been worried about how it would affect the cars this afternoon.
Yeah, some parts of the track more sheltered, some parts. I remember it does get really, and it's that dangerous wind when you're by the coast. Got absolutely roasted last year because you think it's not that hot because of the breeze. Oof, goodness me.
What factor were you wearing?
Factor nothing.
Factor nothing.
Factor nothing.
Rookie error. I mean, the wind in Bahrain. Can you remember the wind in Bahrain when we landed on the Wednesday, Thursday? I mean, I thought Jenny was going to disappear with the wind being when we walked for lunch that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly when you are close to the beach, like close to the sea like this, the sand gets picked up and then falls and deposits itself onto the circuit. So if there's ever a red flag, actually, then the circuit gets worse for the first 5 minutes after a red flag, and it takes a while to clean up again. And this is something that we're going to see throughout the weekend. Yes, the track will improve, but if the wind continues to stay gusty and quite strong, there will always be this first 10-minute area where the track is pretty dirty again.
So out over the start-finish straight comes Lance Stroll. He's one of the few drivers out on circuit. In fact, he's just left the pits on his soft tyres in the Aston Martin. He, Tsunoda and Mick Schumacher are the only three drivers on circuit right now. Just trying to, I couldn't quite tell. I think there is Flovis all over the Aston Martin, but their livery has a load of sort of bright yellow flashes, but I don't think that is designed to be there on the rear wing. So load of Flovis on the rear of Stroll's car. He's just coming through the S's now as he comes through the tightening right-hander of turn 9, then flicks left at 10 and down towards the looping, banked left-hand hairpin at turn 13. He's 6/10 down on Verstappen in Sector 1 with less than 16 minutes to go. Quite a circuit, this. It's quick, isn't it?
I would love to drive this circuit.
Really?
I would love to drive this circuit. Maybe, I mean, Formula E would be fun, but especially one of these. One of these, it would be incredible. This is more of a question for Andrew, really, because I'm just interested to hear what he's got to say on this. Aston Martin, we're watching it now with Lance Stroll driving, coming through Sector 3 now. 1.1 seconds off the fastest time so far. What do Aston Martin need to do to become a serious threat within Formula One? What's the next step for them?
Well, it's a really interesting question, Sam, because obviously Lawrence Stroll, the Canadian billionaire, took them over when Force India collapsed effectively in 2018. And he's a very, very ambitious man, and he's not known for his patience either. And they've been talking for a while about how, they always, when in their previous life, whether it be Jordan or Force India or Midland or whatever, they were sort of famous for overachieving given the level of their resources, basically. And so they're saying, well, imagine what we can achieve when we've got the resources. Well, now they've got the resources, or certainly more resources, probably not as much as Ferrari or Mercedes. There is a budget cap now. No one can spend more than $140 million on the technical side of the car. And yet, here they are with, one of the slowest cars on the grid after a big change in regulations.
Later than that.
No problem.
Leclerc's already thinking that they should be at the end of the pit lane as world champions, but the garage is in. He thought they were later down. Actually, no, it's the other way around. He thought they were further down the championship order, so he just drove straight past Ferrari and ended up parking at McLaren. Do carry on, Andrew.
Yeah, and they've got. They say that what it's about is just getting themselves in a position where they can, in terms of the sort of behind-the-scenes stuff, they can compete with the best. That's. They're building a new factory at Silverstone, for example, where their base is, which is going to come on stream early next year, they say, and they talk about that being state-of-the-art. They're going to have their own wind tunnel, which they don't at the moment. They share Mercedes right now. Not there's anything wrong with the Mercedes wind tunnel, obviously. But I was talking to someone quite close to that team before qualifying, actually, in...
Keep pushing him if he wants to ruin his tyres for the first lap. That's fine.
So that's Verstappen being told to keep pushing him. He can ruin his tyres for the first lap if he wants. That's fine. It's side by side, I think, with Bottas coming into the final couple of corners in the Alfa Romeo. So that was a bit of a weird battle going on. Do finish your point, Andrew. Verstappen's about to start a lap on softs.
Yeah, in Bahrain, and there was already suspicion that they were very far off the pace, and we were sort of joking about the size of the volcanic eruption there was going to be in the Aston Martin pit offices when Lawrence Stroll found out just how slow the car was. Would it be Etna? Would it be Mount St Helens? Would it be Krakatoa? And I think it was more along the lines of Krakatoa than Etna on Saturday evening in Bahrain, and so there'll be a lot of people in Aston Martin very uncomfortable at the moment, with a lot of uncomfortable questions being thrown at them by Mr. Stroll as to why and how they found themselves in this position, even allowing for the fact that they don't quite yet have the resources of the top teams.
And look, I enjoy the volcano banter. I wouldn't have known that Krakatoa is necessarily bigger than Etna, honestly, so those gags went over my head a little bit.
You thought the fire could be cold,
right,
so
let's not get bogged down in that again.
You don't have any hope when it comes to volcanoes.
11 minutes and 4, only the cold ones. I can do cold volcanoes. 11 minutes and 40 seconds to go. Verstappen, has he backed off on this lap? I think he has. He started fairly swiftly. In fact, he's 35, a couple of tenths off in Sector 1. Quite a few seconds off in Sector 2, so maybe he's gone on to a bit of an early long run. Lewis Hamilton has just started a lap now. He's in 7th place, but he too does not seem to be flying. So I think we're seeing, because of the free practice 1 conditions in the daylight, it's about 10 to 6 in Saudi Arabia at the moment. I guess we're not seeing the sort of full qualifying runs that you would normally see towards the end of an FP1, and they'll wait for a more representative free practice 2 session. Lewis Hamilton's got quite a clear tint on his visor. You could see his eyes quite clearly as he came down towards turn 13, which is interesting. Obviously, stick that on later, but it seems quite sunny at the moment for that.
Lewis wears a bell, so I also wear a bell. I really like the fit of their race helmets, and they do a range of visors. So typically, you have a very clear one for when it's raining. You have a smoked visor for if there's a little bit of glare. Then you go into your oil-based ones that look like your nice Oakley sunglasses, for example. And they two really, really good versions of that. Lewis normally...
I smell a bit of a burning feeling, but I'm not sure if it's my car or another car.
A burning feeling, so I presume you're saying smell, and not sure if it's my car or the other cars. Do carry on.
Strange. So Bell do two very good of these oil-based visors, one lighter than the other, and Lewis over the years has tended to run the lighter version of that.
Okay. Here's Verstappen's radio again.
Max, we are happy it's not your car.
Okay.
Not his car, so that's fine. Jenny.
Slightly disconcerting, isn't it? I think a lot of the drivers go on smell when they're out there and feel, and when they smell something bizarre, their first instinct is, oh my goodness, what's wrong with my car? I was just going to say about the Mercedes, still struggling, it's still bumping a lot. They were hopeful that coming into this track, because it's so much smoother than last time out in Bahrain, that it wouldn't be as bad and that they could kind of start trying to rule things out. But apparently, according to Hamilton, it's still porpoising a lot. It's still very bumpy out there, but they are doing comparisons with the rear wing on those Mercedes cars, trying a sort of lower profile one, trying one with a little gurney flap at the back and then taking that off. So lots of different solutions being tried. But earlier on today they said in the press conference they weren't quite sure if drag or power was giving them less speed and which was the primary concern. But it's obviously a combination of issues that they're trying to resolve, but I don't think anything's going to happen immediately when it comes to that. You're looking at a pretty substantial lead time.
Yeah, absolutely. George Russell was asked about it, and he was saying that he didn't want to put a date on it, but he said sort of worst case scenario, even if it's the summer break at Spa, there's still a lot of racing to go in the second half of the year. So that, I think I get the feeling that if they had to put a date on it, it would be like round 7 or 8 or something like that in an ideal world, but obviously they don't want to put dates on it. What's the weirdest thing you ever smelt in a racing car?
I don't know. I mean, when I've raced in endurance racing at Sebring and even at Le Mans, sometimes you can smell food by the side of the track.
Like barbecues and stuff?
Yeah, so going down the back straight at night at Sebring, you can smell the barbecues. You can smell that sort of American barbecued sort of ribbed kind of smell, which is quite nice. It almost makes you want to hit early, say there's something wrong with the car. And also when you're going through Tetra Rouge, there's like a caravan park and lots of fans close to that area at Le Mans, and you can definitely smell the same sort of thing, although more sort of French and sausagey, sort of French sausage.
Okay,
what's it called? A saucisson, I think.
Yeah, that
saucisson.
Yeah,
like that on a barbecue over in Le Mans.
Beautiful.
Going back to the porpoising.
Yeah, a lot of bouncing, guys.
There we go, on cue. Thank you, Carlos. But I was more talking about the Mercedes, and you could definitely see going on board with George Russell, the bouncing into turn 13.
Yeah, and just seen a bit of it there with Carlos Sainz as well.
Same corner, yeah.
Yeah. So Verstappen is quickest still, 4 tenths ahead of Gasly, half a second ahead of Leclerc, Tsunoda 4th fastest, so solid run for the AlphaTauris, and actually solid for Tsunoda, only 2 tenths away from Gasly. Perez 5th, Ocon 6th, Hamilton 7th, Alonso 8th, Bottas 9th, Ricciardo 10th, and then we've got Stroll, Norris, Sainz, Russell and Albon, the top 15. Hülkenberg, Latifi, Zhou, Schumacher, the 19 drivers to have set a lap time. Magnussen in the pits. Schumacher quite a long way away, but his lap time on the medium tyres. Everybody else is on the softs at the moment. Rob Colley says the nicest smell is petrichor, of course, which we learnt about on this programme a few years ago. Benny, Andrew Benson. That was smooth, wasn't it?
No, I just wanted to pick up on that remark. Carlos Sainz was talking about the bouncing. A number of the drivers were saying that they were a bit concerned about if they experience porpoising around this Jeddah track because it's so fast and because a lot of the things that look like corners on the telly aren't actually corners for Formula One cars. They're flat out, and it kind of goes hand in hand with other safety concerns that Formula One drivers have got about the track, which is that they think it's not safe. Why the walls so close? They asked when these are, they're not straight. They're corners, and there's visibility issues with the walls being so close to the track. And they've asked for safety changes to be made for this year, and they don't think the safety changes in terms of visibility have been enough. So if you combine the visibility issues with the high speed, with the fact that they're now, if they're porpoising, they also have control issues of the car. That's going to make quite a few drivers quite nervous about this weekend.
Lars, we're going to have to box and put some fuel in the car. We're going to have to box and put fuel in the car.
So Stroll needs to come into the pits to put some fuel in the car. Interesting one. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, he's just had a bit of a twitch coming through the sort of right-left at 16 and 17. Had some big spins here last year. Carlos Sainz, yeah.
Didn't he just? It's when the Ferrari was fully loaded last year at some parts of the circuit, middle sector. It would be loaded and then it would go like that, Jack. It would simply, the rear would be stable and then be gone faster than you can imagine. We've just seen a little twitch there, and I think that this kind of that kind of handling, we're going to see it all weekend from all the cars. Everybody struggling out there for grip. One car though, one team that seems to thrive when the track is dusty and dirty and green compared to others is the AlphaTauri. They always, we're only 2 races in. Both of the FP1s, they've been right at the front.
Yeah, that's very true. Williams a little bit more in the mix this time. I mean, a little bit more is strong, but Albon in 15th and Latifi in 17th. Obviously Williams, Albon saying earlier on they were disappointed with how Bahrain had gone and the place that the car was in, but Bahrain was in general one of their weaker circuits last year. They still have similar sort of limiting factors in the car, and so they weren't too disheartened and hope to be a bit more in the midfield this weekend. Jenny?
Yeah, just to come back on the point that Andrew was making about the vision and drivers struggling to see at some points, especially with porpoising. I have completed the Drive to Survive programme, and I found it really interesting that Max Verstappen was saying that he was struggling with his vision in the penultimate race, this race last year, and they were asking if it was to do with the lights, what it could possibly be. Now, he did go on to set one of the most amazing, or potentially set one of the most amazing qualifying laps of his career if it hadn't have been for the fact that he crashed at the final moment. But it is unnerving, I think, having spoken to a few of the drivers, to have this in the dark as well, and the lights being beamed down. And Sam, I suppose you deal with that when you do Le Mans for WEC, but it is an eerie feeling to drive in the dark with lights coming down and beaming down on you. It's different, isn't it?
It is different. It's artificial light, Jenny, and it gives off a different perspective when you're driving, you're so close to the ground. It's very, very different. I actually had something, we recently had a race in Formula E in Saudi Arabia as well. I wear contact lenses, and I was focusing so hard on what I was doing. I wasn't blinking enough, and actually my right contact lens basically moved away from my pupil because
it didn't go around the back.
It went up the top. So then I had very blurred vision in one eye for a few laps. And it took a while to get the moisture back in the eye because you're so focused on some of these street circuits, you forget to blink, so your eyes dry out, and then you don't have the same vision as when your eyes have got the moisture. It was a bit bizarre.
Oh, wow. as racing driver excuses go, it's a good one.
Yeah, that's not my dog ate the homework.
No, exactly. Charles Leclerc has just gone to the top of the times. On the soft tyres, 0.3 quicker than Valtteri Bottas, who was pushing really hard in the Alfa Romeo. He's now gone third quickest. As I say, 0.3 away from Leclerc. Verstappen still in second place on the hard tyre. Sainz is fourth, Gasly fifth, Tsunoda sixth, Perez, Ocon, Hamilton, Alonso the top 10, Ricciardo, Stroll, Norris, Zhou and Russell the top 15, and then Albon, Latifi and Schumacher, the 19 drivers, to have set a lap time, but a fairly decent lap there from Leclerc. He got right up behind Hamilton coming out of the final corner. Hamilton was just starting a flying lap. Doesn't actually look as though it would have hurt Leclerc too much. He then got a bit of a toe, if anything, and then out across the line to go quickest on a 30.7. But as I say, he was on the soft tyre, only a 10th quicker than Verstappen on the hard tyre. So Verstappen actually said earlier on the day he was pretty disappointed with Bahrain. They thought they were going to have more pace than they did. He thought the car would be quicker than it was, and at the moment, second quickest on the hard tyres is a pretty decent effort. Checker flag is out, and Leclerc's going for another lap, I think. But yeah, Verstappen looking strong.
Verstappen was super strong. He was all of our pick for the win, wasn't he? Everybody on the Radio 5 Live team, we all thought that Verstappen would do the job come Sunday. Now, was it they didn't have as much pace as they thought, or was it Ferrari were quicker than they thought? Now, I think it's a little bit of both.
Well, Leclerc has just done the fastest first sector. He's on the soft tyre. Whoop. Back end goes a little bit, and I think that'll be him aborting his lap there, Charles Leclerc, because that was a bit of a leery one, I think, coming into 16, and he is not improving. So checker flag is out. Leclerc will end the session quickest on a 1 minute 30.772, a 10th quicker than Max Verstappen in second, 0.3 to Bottas in third, 0.3 to Sainz in fourth, half a second to Gasly in fifth, 0.7 to Tsunoda in sixth, and then seventh is Sergio Perez, 8th is Ocon, 9th Hamilton, 10th Alonso, 1.6 seconds away from Leclerc. Then you've got Ricciardo, Stroll, Norris, Zhou, Russell, Hülkenberg, Albon, Latifi, Schumacher, the 19 drivers. Hydraulic problems for Kevin Magnussen means he doesn't set a lap in this session.
So that is free practice 1 in Saudi Arabia. A relatively unrepresentative session, we all know that, because the sun will set, the lights will come down, and it'll look a whole lot different when we next go out in free practice 2. But the usual suspects up there, I would say, Sam, apart from Bottas. I mean, we're used to him being up there, but Bottas up there in the Alfa Romeo is a different thing.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise, a nice surprise. Nice to see Valtteri doing well, Jenny. But again, this session is fairly unrepresentative. I don't think we can read too much into Bottas being P3 at this stage of the weekend. I think that we will get a better picture later on this afternoon, so everybody please stay tuned.
It's a glorious track. I just think I look at it, and the more I look at it, the more I think it's got the ingredients that the drivers like. Lewis Hamilton earlier on was saying, I hope it's not changed too much because I really liked it last year. Sam, why is it that this is such a driver's track? What do they like about it?
Because we like to go fast, Jenny. That's what we enjoy doing, and this circuit is fast and furious. I think, yeah, there is a danger element to this circuit, unlike a lot of other places, because if you go offline, in a lot of places here, you will hit a wall, and you will hit a wall hard. But that's just the price you pay at this particular circuit. But when you get it right, as we saw a few times last year, especially with Lewis's lap, with so many drivers doing a great job in qualifying last year, it looks absolutely spectacular. One of my favourite laps I think I've ever seen was the lap where Max Verstappen actually crashed at the end of qualifying last year. I don't think I've ever seen a lap more committed than that one last year. It was so stunning to drive until he got to turn 27.
And then it all went wrong. It was painful to watch. It was painful to be there, and you felt for him. You really did. But there we go. It was a fairly aggressive weekend when it came to F1. And Jack, we spoke about this in the podcast and at the end of last week. We're not expecting it to be quite as aggressive and quite as feisty because there's not so much on the line right now.
No, exactly. It's in the way that in the last 10 minutes of a football match, everyone gets a bit angrier and a bit more desperate. It was that sort of vibe, wasn't it? Where people couldn't afford to lose anymore. Whereas in these early stages, you can afford to lose a little bit. Not ideal, obviously, but Charles Leclerc quickest for Ferrari, Verstappen second, those two at the top of the order again. But as you said earlier on, Jenny, it's not particularly representative. We'll get to see more representative running in free practice too, and that'll give us a bit of a clearer idea of where we're at. Mercedes 9th for Hamilton and 15th for Russell.
Antonio Giovinazzi in his Ferrari uniform, he's their reserve driver, just poking his head through, watching the drivers take the start line. They'll do a practice grid, form up and outrun each other to the first turn just to get an idea of how to start the race. Of course, race gets underway at 6 o'clock on Sunday, so make sure you join us for that. But practice getting underway in a couple of hours' time, so make sure you come back when the lights are on and the sun has definitely set in Saudi Arabia. Thanks for joining us for now. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.